Salutations, savants! Welcome if you're new, and I'm glad you're back if returning. Here we have the final installment of our Ys VIII No Flash Challenge, but no preamble today. Let's finish this thing. Immediately after the fall of Gaiusburn and the conclusion of Chapter 3, we get a bird's eye view of the other half of the Isle of Seiren. No hovels and Jimmy Rig Shacks over here. We have towers, a cityscape, and something resembling a dam. This is, or was, an entire civilization. We might find more survivors, Rakota's father, and the mystery surrounding this cursed island. And before we set off, Hummel re-enters the picture. No speech, no explanation, but none of that matters. Welcome back to the fold, Hummel. I'm still a bit miffed he dodged going to Kiergaard's doctor's appointment, but I'll let it slide because he's good with kids. Later, we find the first definitive signs of intelligent life that lives, or rather, lived here. The crew decides to set up camp for the night. The night in the present day means a day in the past. Time for another Donna section. Donna currently has the task of going to the capital to play nice with the would-be new queen. Donna, for her part, has a different plan in mind. She wants to do her duty as the Maiden of the Tree and establish a good rapport with the people so she can better serve them. All I hear is a string of side quests before I can actually get to progressing. Don't get it twisted though. I love Donna, but we're on a time crunch, sweetie. Meeting the queen, who turns out to be her old friend Sarai, back to Adol and the gang, and immediately upon returning to our co-current cohorts, Rakota summarizes Adol's entire existence in 4 words and is one of my favorite lines in the whole game. Sahad says the E word, and much like a vampire, Loxia takes that as an invitation to invade our eardrums with more Darwinism. Donna is now having future visions of Adol standing over the ruins of the city. Naturally, being some kind of mystic news reporter, she decides to travel to the same location and plant a sapling to help him on his journey. Back in the present, Adol wakes up from his post-sleep nap to find a giant root has spontaneously appeared out of nowhere. The next thing we gain is the ability to cross era, or switch between Donna and Adol. Accompanying that is this weird game of temporal teleport between Adol and Donna, the former heading to different locales, and the latter planting saplings to help with navigation. After some light work back at camp, we find ourselves in the same clearing Donna once stood in, though it couldn't be more different. Amongst the ruins, we spot a man in the distance. We give chase as he seems intent on intentionally avoiding us. Be he friend or foe, that remains to be seen. We find ourselves at the precipice of a great ravine, but the mysterious man is nowhere in sight. Where could he be? So, this mysterious person in question is Thanatos. And no, he's just some old man with a crazy name, not some secret boss in disguise. What, you wouldn't casually name your child Ganesha? What about Tyr, Tezcatlipoca, Ra, Izanagi, Pashakamak? Well, this deific moonlighter turns out to be Rakota's father, but more importantly, another pair of hands for camp labor. We also become privy to another piece of interesting information. Hummel, who had been transporting a mysterious package, finally delivers it to its recipient. Thanatos Beldine, the contents in question, pickles, and a boat blueprint. Well, Loxia, looks like you're my new favorite piercing unit. At least until the cutscene is over. Back in Donna's shoes, or sandals, we head to the temple to assist Adol. Though before we get to do that, I do need to make a small concession about the ruling. I'm almost certain I've said this at some point prior, but we're going to address it now just to be clear. This is a challenge to see if I can beat the game, not every boss. This is important because there are quite a few optional bosses, both in the present and quite a few more in the past. In this area, the Sanctuary Crypt is the de facto endgame for both groups. It's filled with bosses that are optional for progression, but mandatory in punishment. Mercifully, I'm only required to go through sparse bits of it as Donna. The rest remains optional, yet one of those mandatory sections has just come upon us. So Adol is going to have to wait in front of the temple ruins like a child waiting for his kid cuisine to come out of the microwave. At the end of this segment, we find Grazios, the awakened Azure Dragon Armor, gatekeeper of this part of the Sanctuary Crypt. And it's our first boss fight as Miss Tiny But Mighty, and we've got no party members, no fallbacks. We're in the big leagues now. The game isn't afraid, and is, in fact, more than willing to hit you with a plethora of swift-moving and high-damaging attacks. My first few attempts barely even got him to 90%. The message now was loud and clear. Flash or be trash. And I'm looking a lot like a generic isekai right now. He has the repertoire of any boss worth their salt. The staples of the RPG boss world, if you will. So, beyond the usual greetings of your swipes and strikes, he comes equipped early on with a rather devastating flip kick that sends out a forward projectile that tracks you, a charge attack that covers a decent amount of range, a roar that's for asserting dominance. Now the question becomes how to deal with each of these different moves. Well, yes, the tried and true run to the right and attack does work, generally speaking. The fast swipe I want to bait out the most, since it's the easiest to dodge and counter off of. However, if I'm too close, then there's a chance he'll use the charge attack, which is nearly impossible to dodge in close proximity. Now, I could stay out of distance and just fire the orbs, but I would eventually run out of skill gauge, meaning I would, of course, need to go up and refill it. So even though under normal circumstances, I wouldn't be using the orb attack as much as I do, it's fast, it covers distance, so you gotta learn to make do. Once his health gets low enough, he'll incorporate a fire attack that I'll either hover up to use or fire from the edge of the arena. Despite its damage and fast-moving nature, it can be avoided simply by standing far enough away and jumping over it, so it doesn't really change the dynamic of the fight all that much. All in all, as I go over the footage again, it doesn't seem quite as bad as I initially remember, but these things are always easier to watch than do. And I do remember this boss giving me quite a bit of trouble from first-hand experience. But with enough time and patience, I get adept enough with Donna's moves, engaging his, and a few close wins became the infuriating inspiration I needed to give it the final push. The blue dragon gets the pink slip. Well, with that out of the way, we can finally get back to the present. And would you look at that, the roots kept the bridge from collapsing. Inside the Temple of the Great Tree, architecture that was once colorful and ornate has long since fallen into disarray. Where people once worshipped and walked, monsters now scour and survive. After some more hallway running and a bit of primordial pest control, you come across this odd, lifeless-looking exhibit in the middle of a room. Is this supposed to be a surprise? Is that lifeless, not stationary? But without further ado, we've got our next boss, Bratchon, Masterless Sanctuary Protector. I mean, we could probably just run past it, but that would just be bad manners now, wouldn't it? Now, let me start off by saying this guy is massive, and that's kind of an issue, because it means his attacks can reach a large majority of this rather meager-sized arena with very little effort. Without even getting into his moveset, I can already tell you this is going to be quite a David and Goliath situation. For him. I almost feel sorry for the poor guy, because he doesn't know what's waiting for him. Xavi, you might be asking, where is this unjustified confidence coming from? Oh, well, let me tell you. You see, I recently acquired a rather interesting technique. A skill that's borderline useless when you're playing the game normally, but guess what we're not doing? And as fortune would have it, this skill was acquired right before I got to this boss fight. Hummel's Counter Trick. It's a counter ability that deals no damage unless it's triggered by an opponent's attack. When it is, Hummel jumps into the air and fires off a counter shot. It's fairly cheap, it deals decent damage, but that's not even the best part. It gives you iframes. Once I realized just how powerful this was, I genuinely considered banning it from the challenge run, but I can tell you, I didn't. And one, I'm really glad I didn't, given some later boss fights. And two, there are some caveats to its use. The obvious elephant in the room, it's a skill, meaning it's taking up one of the 4 skill slots Hummel is able to use. That said, the impact of this is minimal. However, this does mean that the other abilities see less use in this particular context. And while those abilities are pretty strong, like a lot of moves in this game, they take a long time to execute and aren't safe to use without the protection of Flash. Counter Trick, on the other hand, has iframes pretty much throughout the entirety of its attack duration, and better yet, you can cancel the last few frames with another one, effectively giving you perpetual invulnerability. Now, the second rhino in the room is skill gauge consumption. 15 might not sound like a lot, but it's still something, which means I can't just chain counter tricks endlessly until the boss is dead. I will eventually have to stop countering and, Gaia forbid, actually hit the enemy with a regular attack to refill my skill gauge. which means I still generally have to learn enough of the boss fight to make sure I can adequately dodge their attacks in order to land hits and refill my skill gauge for counter trick. So at the end of the day, it's more of a stopgap rather than an invalidation of the challenge as a whole. Past the Guardian, we find ourselves at the base of the Great Tree, and at its base, preserved in a magical epoxy resin, is none other than Donna herself. But before these mysteries can be further ruminated on, urgent business calls us back to the village. The others find Adol's tale a little hard to stomach, but Dogi's long since grown used to Adol's culinary level taste and absurdity. Still, a light workout with the mountain rage should help digest that information a little easier, though the couch to 5k wasn't going quite as expected, with the primordials appearing in abnormally large numbers. Granted, given that primordials are supposed to be extinct, any amount is technically abnormal, but you get the point. Donna makes her grand appearance just as things are starting to look dire. With the added pair of hands, we clean things up pretty quickly, but later that evening, we're left with more questions than answers concerning Donna's memory loss and the island as a whole. So, we're going to do what we've always done. Explore the island like a photographer in an art museum. No flashing. We return to the you must be this tall to ride side of the island to resume our search when Donna catches a migraine from looking at this specific landscape. Nausea? Vertigo? Maybe. Plot relevance? Almost certainly. Upon arriving at another crystal, Donna tells us she is able to amplify the essence and pass the proverbial blunt to the entire party, enabling them to take a hit of that primordial moongrass. Translation: they can see the past too. The people's trip takes a turn for the worse as I am voluntold to play as Donna again. Our way is barred by a mini-boss of sorts, a Gigantyrannus. He's big, nasty, 11 levels higher than me, and worst of all, mandatory. I'm dealing digits. His health bar is not moving, but not all hope is lost, just most. This Zelda sprite gave Donna its power, which allows her to switch from slash damage to bash damage, making the fight actually winnable before my controller turns to stone and I start unironically saying, back in my day. With the collective trip at an end, the party arrives at the next dungeon, Baja Tower, a prehistoric monument of a time before. With not much else of interest in the leaning tower save for the architecture, we are confronted by the mini-boss, X-Metal, essence-fueled Guardian Knight. Ignoring the fact that his name sounds like a new concept rock genre, its fight is far less innovative. It slams and spins, I counter and win. He might have been hard as rock, but he didn't know how to roll with the punches. The poor guy was too tired for an encore, so he gave us double jumping as a consolation gift. Did I ever say how East games are 3D Metroidvanias? We take a quick break back at camp to find that Allison, the seamstress, is pregnant and we need to find her husband. Quina is paying her respects to the late captain, and Hummel door dashes an egg back to its nest in the fucking stratosphere. Just goes to show, even when ancient entities assail our doorstep, life still goes on. You know what doesn't go on though? My screen zoom. Apparently, for all my magnanimous planning, I didn't check OBS once in 2 hours of recording. Meaning that while it looked fine on my end, the actual footage looked like... yeah, not great, so we're gonna speed through this segment. At the top of the leaning and now egregiously cropped tower, we find the next boss, the Great Guardian of Knowledge, name currently unknown. But for now, his name shall be Bullet Hell Light, or perhaps Projectile Detention, if I could actually flash. But oh boy, this fight's a doozy, and I don't need the full screen to see that. This boss was one I remember rather well due to the unique nature of the boss fight. Primarily the camera angle, reminiscent of classic Ys and other older top-down action games. The general strategy here is to, of course, play as Hummel, but beyond that, sticking close and jumping over the many projectiles, as almost every attack can be avoided with a double jump. And staying close lets you avoid the breath attack as well as having the best chance of recovering when this happens. The fight is manageable enough after enough attempts, and I let Donna finish it off during its last down cycle, and with that, Carveros gets cropped like my screen. Past that, Little Miss Primordial boots up Windows Vista as we learn a bit more about our ocean nemesis. I won't tell you more, but my lip reading abilities aren't the best and most of the dialogue is cut off. Also, there's a ghost ship, which is just about as well put together as my screen ratio, is what I would say, but I have noticed and fixed the issue. Later, we find Master Kong, Rakota's mentor. He teaches us a new ability if we can defeat him. Emphasis on the if. He takes a ripe mango every time he beats you, so it's not exactly free. But you know what is free? Killer Queen! Load save file! We find our forlorn ship, and it is indeed shepherded by real-ass ghosts. And obviously, we walk away aboard. We board it. After we crippled some calcium corsairs, we find a letter showing that these pirates, now bound in death, were once bound in life. Emancipated men, Spartacusing on the high seas. But seeing their current condition, you can probably guess what happened to them, being on a cursed island and all. And let me tell you, it changes a man. Like how it changed the captain into the lost soul of the great pirate, the pirate revenant. But scurvy must have hit this one hard, because he might not have any blood left, but he was certainly bleeding life. Not much relevance to this revenant, as he goes down with little trouble. After mopping the deck with him, he thanked us by giving us a map for Okeanos' migration pattern, and he kept singling out our own sailor. I wonder why that could be. Aaron tells Adol, someone who may or may not match his description, is on a government watch list. We unlock lore-friendly fast traveling. It doesn't change anything for the player, but it lets the characters actually warp around. Donna has another prehistory flashback as we approach the next step of our destination. Inside the dam, we come to find the Archaeozoic Chasm, nature's largest toilet and the home of our prey. I contemplated underwater travel, but the party was quickly subsumed by the murky depths. This is what happens when you ignore the rule of thirds. Not wanting to become a found footage documentary, we press on in another direction. Finding the ancient fish of the Eternian era, Coelacanthos, we start to reach the intersection where most bosses now are tests of my ability to deal with whatever few unique tools they have, rather than providing a distinctly unique challenge that requires some specific strategy to overcome, and the Energizer Carp is no exception. It had 1 health bar, 1 note attacks, and while it wasn't a one and done, it didn't take too many tries to finish filleting this fish. For our efforts, we're given the Hermit Scale, allowing us to breathe underwater, so you can forget everything I said about the rule of thirds. On the other side of the previously uncrossable path, we find, well, what do you know, more fucking water. Also, Donna beat Dogi in arm wrestling. I complete some more side quests, Gong the Kong, by exploiting his inability to deal with the legendary tactic called Hit and Run. We'll be covering more of him later, when we next come across him. Back at our sea diving documentary, we come across an opening and a plaque of the Lombardia. We have found the nest of our nemesis, and it is time for the hunter to become the hunted. Our castaway friends do the fantasy equivalent of dynamite fishing, though swap the gunpowder for siege engines. Apparently, we aren't the only ones who can use the power of friendship, as our quarry calls for primordial backup. Dogi, being the beefy intellectual, decides to fist fight the dinosaurs. Back at our maritime battlefield, we lie in wait to ambush the guardian of the eternal distant sea, Okeanos. This fight is not quite like the others. It is a boss, yes, but one with raid mechanics. It's also sporting 3 health bars and disjointed hitboxes that make it hard to counter. Frankly, I felt a bit out of my depth with this one. For as much as I made fun of the lightning fish, I too had become a bit of a one-trick pony, but I had persisted well enough without the counter, and with great power comes great responsibility. Wait, sorry, I meant to say, if I am nothing without the counter, then I don't deserve to have it. But unsure of what I should do, as I really don't remember how I was supposed to fight this boss regularly, I used the only tool that was available, glowing orbs scattered around the arena. The damage on them left a lot to be desired, but it was one of the few ways I could quickly attack Okeanos, so I shot them with reckless abandon, hoping for something, completely forgetting about the building stagger bar beneath the boss's health, which would be integral to victory. You see, these beautiful bright balls deal quite a significant amount of staggering damage, stunning Squidward long enough for the glowing position, or G-spot, to be available for massive damage spikes. And on a somewhat unrelated note, I'm pretty sure this is the most amount of damage I've ever seen in a single hit. Biblical damage aside, I'm doing fairly well this run. It's down to less than half. This might be the run I Oh, that still stings. All things considered though, as nervous as I was in the beginning, this wasn't as bad as I felt it could have been. Between underwater physics, multiple health bars, one-shot attacks, and statuses, this fight, like many troubles in life, aren't as insurmountable once you reach the end of them. And some empowered skills from Donna takes this foe that was so bold and brash to folded and trashed. And truth be told, I did think this would be one of the fights that would be impossible. Almost as impossible as Loxia having a tear go down her face underwater. After the celebration, we find ourselves back in the past. The Rapture had come for them, and the Crucible for me. Originally hoping to prevent calamity, Donna finds herself enveloped in a strange fog and strange foes. My attacks prove ineffective until I find a spirit that gives us Donna's third damage type, Luminous style, and just in time for the boulder to my climb, Cobalt Eidolon of the Fog, Lacrimosa. This one isn't just a stacked hand, he's the whole deck. The Ice Roar requires Pierce because of its immunity to the cold status, Blunt for the rock armor, and Slash for emotional support. I flashed too close to the boss's hitbox during an attempt, and rather than reload, I threw in the towel and stopped moving, resigning myself to its judgment. Then, for unknown reasons, this organic Silverado decided not to turn me into roadkill. Getting back to things, this boss really doesn't have anything I haven't seen before, but despite that, I seem to have little success in managing to perform well enough to secure a win. Something would always go wrong. Mostly that charge attack that I either keep getting hit by, or flashing because he gets too close. And if it's not that, the halfway point attack. Lacrimosa busts out its best Final Fantasy VII audition and starts raining meteors on me. The meteors track and the attack lasts a while. I tried blunt damage for its higher defense, but it barely worked. I had just enough healing to endure the barrage. Now, you might be thinking that as long as I can clutch out the other half I should be fine, right? Unfortunately, no, because I can call in the airstrike again. We really have reached a point of no return. At this juncture, I don't really have the ability to go back and farm for more levels or items. What I have is what I'm stuck with. I could load an auto save, go to the past, and farm a few levels for Donna, but I don't think that would make a realistic difference against this attack. I've had my share of hard-to-avoid moves, but this might be the limit. Is it theoretically possible I could outrun the multiple barrages as Luminous? Sure, but plausibility is not likeliness, which makes what happens next all the more vexing. On this attempt during the Ice Roar, my attacks seem to duplicate and multiply, either as a frame rate or mechanical glitch, I have no idea. But it immediately pushed the boss into his desperation attack. I was stunned and shocked at having the entire fight skipped, so I panic healed and dealt the final hit. I did make a point at the beginning of the challenge run that I wouldn't exploit any game-breaking glitches, but from some later tests I did on other enemies, I'd only found one other instance of this glitch working, which we'll cover then. On edge and a little guilty, I decided to keep the victory. If you want to count this as a failure, go right ahead. I'll consider it the game throwing me a bone. Be it at the hands of natural selection or divine intervention, I laid this evolutionary adversary to rest. Also, Donna gets her gnarly shoulder tap. In the present, Donna has run off somewhere. After some upgrades, we find her. Adult tells her he's the only red she needs in her life, and something about restoring her memories, I think. Nevertheless, we're back in business with our full party. Remember in my past life when I said something about that high damage glitch coming up? Yeah, well, we're already there. Not quite a boss, but an obstacle mandatory to progression. This Saurian, Madroskella, the latest obstacle in our path towards public decency. I had actually gotten the glitch to happen twice this fight. First time didn't kill, but it did bring it incredibly low. Figured I would just finish it off and let the glitch be what it was. But as I was hits away, I flashed. You can hear the anguish through the monitor. And on the very next attempt, the self-same glitch. At this point, I had determined that it was some interaction between the Pierce stance basic attack and certain enemy types. I wasn't going to stop using the Pierce stance as it was mobile and fast hitting. That and I know I didn't have too many forced pass sections left. And seeing as how the glitch was impossible given that Luminous is not available in the present, I decided to let it be as I wouldn't be clearing too much more content in the past for the run. We find a totally normal old lady and some Sebastian and Hayate fanfic OC. Don't steal. The game calls them Silva and Franz. I call them manual labor. Get to shoveling. We reunite with Kong later, who is now willing to train more party members. Thankfully, the fights don't change all too much, save for the one new move that he teaches the character. Sort of a you beat him once, you beat him 100 times kind of fight. Back at the high-rise villa for crusty old kings, we get the Purifying Bell, an artifact that lets us kill things that are already dead. Don't question it. I test out the new relic an hour later sacrifice. Some jobber who will get downgraded to an elite enemy in the same dungeon. At the apex of this royal retirement home, we find the accursed tyrant of Eternal Night, Basilius, the latest in our lineup of Chunibu challengers. I honestly underestimated how many bosses there would be when I came around to writing the script. Didn't pay it much mind as I was playing, but now, it seems like the list is never ending. And these are only the mandatory bosses. Better judgment tells me to stop, but the sunken cost fallacy demands I continue. So at the very least, I'll show you all the ones worth showing. This is one of the few fights that actually had ads in the boss arena, but these ads aren't bringing sponsors to VPNs or food delivery programs. You need to kill the ads before you can get access to the arena proper. And even once you get inside, more ads appear anyway. This fight is busy, and in none of the good ways. I want to complain about how you spend more time having to deal with the ads than the boss himself, as they'll constantly keep respawning, but they're not the ones who decided to do a challenge run ignoring one of the game's core mechanics. This fight is distracting and a slog more than a genuine test of anything new. Glad to be putting this one behind us. Past that, we find ourselves at a data terminal, but it's unopenable. Then a member of Organization 13 comes and takes the lock off the narrative cookie jar. We get some podcast spiel about how our understanding of evolution is wrong. Turns out the Great Tree of Life might be more of a Great Tree of Calling. Things aren't looking good back at the village. More Saurian types are appearing in raids, newer or rather older variants. They're attacking more frequently too. We're running out of time. We rescue Sir, it should have been you, not the captain, it's not fair, Carlin. Back at Mount Gendarm, we see that the Great Tree has turned into the great producer of primordials, a conveyor belt of apex predators. The plot says natural selection. I say deforestation. Going through old paths, we are greeted by much nastier monsters that weren't here previously, and I know this because I am certain I would have remembered Glavenus from Monster Hunter on my first run through here. We come onto the walkway for the Great Tree and there's... fog. Crimson Eidolon of the Fog. Lay Earthros. And there's no god in the machine to help me this time. The warmer half to the Mist duo. Basically a first like the first. Same cataclysmic meteor attack, just now with fire hazards on the floor. Honestly, watching the footage, it still took me about an hour for the successful run, but it didn't feel as punishing as Donna's. Maybe the meteor rain is slower. Or maybe I'm just more used to playing as Adol or fighting the boss. Either way, it's tough, but manageable. Adol reunites with friends back at the gateway rather than the tree. The game puts Adol back in his default outfit for the sleeve rolling scene. Now he and Donna have matching tattoos. How cute. The Wardens of Evolution show up and tell us that the human exhibit has passed its prime. They are the races that have perished before humans and claim that we would suffer the same fate. Unfortunately for them, Adol is that guy. Back in the past, one last time, Donna's people are in turmoil, turning on one another, claiming her to be a witch of disaster. After the calamity takes her people, Donna seals herself away to avoid being taken by despair and the Wardens, until she reawakens one day at the hands of Adol. We get a bit of fan service with our last castaway Griselda from Memories of Celceta. We arrive at the Saren Garden, a sort of hub for the collective consciousness of a species. It was created by Hydra, trying to save his own people, sadly to no avail. They tell us that our deaths are necessary for the health of the world, and that the harder we try and fail, the stronger the Lacrimosa gets. So the Wardens choose to help us, for it will be that much better for the Lacrimosa when we fail so close to victory. Kinda fucked up when you say it out loud like that. At least the Wardens clear the fog surrounding the Great Tree for us. Inside the Great Tree is a warp to a place called the Octus Overlook. No, you're not imagining it. This is our in-game dungeon and it definitely looks the part. It's also the headquarters of the Wardens where they oversee the world's evolution. 4 Wardens, 4 paths. You see where this is going. You do have to deal with a set of Guardians in order to proceed to each individual domain. Some powerful but none too problematic foes. First path we arrive at is the ocean, the home of Hydra. After a quick skip over some corals, we arrive at the end of the path, where we come across a giant crystal. The stored psyches of Hydra's era, and its ward, Ardor of the Dawn Lamenting Sage, Psyche Hydra. Now this is quite the arena. A circular boss room with no safety rails. You fall off, you're sinking. The fight generally starts with this attack where he jumps into the water, and fish come out of the water and swarm in a straight line. They don't home in on you, and you can easily dodge or one-shot them. There is this other variant where they appear on opposite sides of the ring and make a bit more of a concerted effort to attack you. He's got an assortment of projectiles and this water jet. The attacks are simple on their own, just hope you don't get caught in multiple at once. He'll also turn into a Roomba below a certain HP threshold. Don't fall off and mind the projectiles, and you'll be in the perfect position to behead this Hydra. His defeat releases the psyches of his era. The real Hydra appears before us and tells us that that was his psyche which had succumbed to despair that we had fought. Would we truly succeed or fail? Soon we would all know. With the first path down, we move on to the second. Path of the Frozen Era, the home of Minos. We do get some cool new axe-wielding enemies. Gotta appreciate the small things while staving off species annihilation, you know. Once again, we come across another Psyche crystal. Bellows of the Tundra King, Psyche Minos. This fight is much more standard fare with exactly the kind of moves you would expect a muscly mammoth to have. Below half, he gets this new Wind Tunnel Punch, which can send you off the arena, be wary of that, as well as an upgrade to his Spinning Tornado with an uppercut and shockwave. All in all, not as bad as the Hydra. Seems this Tundra King was standing on thin ice. Minos thanks us for freeing the psyches of his people, but says we can drink together when we inevitably fail. With that done, next is Nestor's home, Path of the Insectoid Era. Two of my least favorite things, geometry and insects. Not much else to say. Will I say the same of Dispassion of the Queen of Multitudes, Psyche Nestor? Yes. Yes, I will. The most unique thing she does is break platforms. She has this tornado move too, which is somewhat difficult, but honestly, I don't want to vindicate her fight any further than I have to because I beat her on my very first try. I had to revive, sure, but shame on you, Nestor. She complains that her Psyche would have won if it had had a better controller, or if the Wi-Fi wasn't bad or something. She then tells us we should low-tier god ourselves, stating that in fact it would be better we do. No puns for her. Moving on. At long last, we arrive at the Path of the Sky, Sorai's home, a land of floating crystals in the stratosphere. Simple but evocative. Hope no one here has vertigo. But Xavi, it's just a bunch of geometry just like Nest. Shh. I know what I said. The lack of visual obstruction gives us a clear line of sight to our goal, as well as a few chests along the way. Hummel asks some rather interesting lore questions. Maybe Psyche Ura, sealed sky despair of the dancer, can answer them for us after we sweep her off her feet. Which doesn't take too long, admittedly. Just like a certain warden who shan't be named again, I cleared this on my first try. Her 2 health bars and support nodes look intimidating on the surface. Besides the fan-favorite meteor rain, most of them are scene dressing that can be avoided with decent maneuvering. That and Hummel's ult shredded her 2nd health bar. Far be it for me to turn down an easy victory so close to the finish. So Sorai, or Ura, is able to mimic the appearances of other species, a bona fide anime skinwalker. After a heart-to-heart between Donner and her very questionable childhood friend, we return to the Saren Garden to see the fully matured Tree of Psyches. Adel goes all He-Man, and his sword is upgraded by the power of the tree, becoming Mistletoe, giving us the power to break into the core of the Octus. At the very center, we find a monolithic entity, our final adversary, Theos de Androgram, the Providence of Evolution. The first thing you will likely notice is that the boss only has 1 health bar. I shouldn't have to tell you that that is a lie. Do not trust it. Phase 1 consists of it pummeling you with, what are those, cat's tails? As well as your complimentary East boss projectiles. Past that, you get to Phase 2, which raises the platform up to its midsection. The arena becomes a full ring, and these purple crystals encircle the boss. In this phase, it has 2 health bars, but you cannot deplete them until you deal with each of the crystals first. Once you do, this larger crystal comes out of its chest. Throughout all of the second phase, you'll have to deal with attacks from its sickle-like appendages, horizontal slashes, and vertical slam attacks that produce shockwaves. There's also this series of electrical rings that you'll have to avoid. Once you manage to destroy the giant crystal, the platform shrinks again and moves up to its chest. You can probably guess how many bars the boss has for this phase, but here's a hint. It's equal to the phase we're on. In phase 3, Theo stops fucking around. He pulls out the fisticuffs and starts beating the shit out of you, and he knows how much of a slippery little bastard you are. So Theos puts this red gate over you to prevent you from jumping his attacks. It also has these weird attacks where it would tap the bottom of the platform and trap you with vines, as well as this black mist and purple lightning breath attack, but it didn't use them very often. Its big attack though was where it would fly far from the arena and shoot this massive platform-wide beam at you. The message was clear. Flash, or counter, I guess, or die. I am surprised to let you counter this. I'm not complaining though. Also, the reason why I was so quick to go over the first 2 phases is because if you mess up for any reason, like flashing, it's better to let it kill you, because the retry feature restarts you at phase 3. I do not have the words to explain how much I think this would have been impossible without this, especially phase 2, which I think is the hardest phase of the fight. With that settled, my main strategy for phase 3 was attacking as Adol and switching to Hummel for counters. Honestly, I feel like there's much more I could say and much more I probably could have done for this challenge or idea, but this is what I had. It's not perfect, and it doesn't need to be. It just needs to evolve into something better than it was yesterday. Thank you to all who watched till the end. I don't know the exact runtime as I'm writing this, but the video will probably be long enough, even though there's so much more I want to say. For now, I'll just say that my next video won't be a challenge run, but that's all. Remember to walk safely, dream wisely, and live freely. I'm Xavi, your SpellSwordSage, and I'll be seeing you